In this lecture, we're going to talk about configuration management, and configuration management is another of the preventative controls we can put in place to make our environments more secure. Whenever we buy a new system or we build a new system, they are, as default, completely open, every port is open, nothing is patched. And to make them more secure, we would have a long list of everything we want to close, all the ports, all the accounts, all the services we need to disable or delete or maybe lock. And then we would apply all the patches. And while we in every place I have worked have always had a server hardening document, for most other devices we had nothing. In one place, they only did server hardening, nothing else. In other places, either we had something for maybe networking devices, or the group that was responsible for those devices, in this case networking, they would kind of have a loose list of things they needed to shut down or turn off. But there was nothing formalized. If we don't have that rigid process, if we don't have that formal process, and we just leave defaults as they are, we're opening ourselves up to a ton of security issues. Luckily, for the exam, you live in that perfect world of rainbows and unicorns. So we do things right. And as part of that, instead of going in and manually doing everything we do when we harden a device, it is much easier, it is much more secure, and it's much easier to administer if we have an OS image that is completely hardened. We have that image that is specific for that system, and when we install a new of those systems, we put that image on there. And then whenever we find new vulnerabilities or new patches are out, whenever something is changed, then we build a new image. Because if our team, every time we get a new system, does the manual server hardening, first off, it's gonna take a ton of time. Secondly, it's really easy to miss something. What if we have 100 things on our list and Bob remembers to implement 99? That number 100 could be something critical that now gives the attacker a way onto our network. So we use images. And like I said, most places we're pretty good about the servers. But what about the switches? What about the routers, the workstations, the phones, the wireless access points? You can sort of think of this like least privilege. We give the system whatever is the least amount of privileges it can use to actually function. We only open the ports it actually needs. We only let the applications that it actually needs stay on the system. We only have the user accounts that has to be there, nothing else. So we build a new server. We build it with the OS that has been hardened, and then we run a vulnerability scan against the server before we put it into production. And we do that because what if there are new vulnerabilities? The system that we use to scan the vulnerabilities with might have an update. It may show us vulnerabilities we didn't know about, or something we missed in our server hardening. Now this is rarely done on workstations, but it should always be done with our servers and our networking equipment. As another added benefit for having that standardized baseline of hardened OSs that we use is we know how much by default is hardened, making it much easier to troubleshoot when something is wrong. And here it is also important to remember that some servers might need some ports open that is outside of our hardening. So when we open that port on that specific server for whatever application that needs it, then that needs to be documented. So with the server we're building, we have installed the hardened image, we have gone through the vulnerability scans, we have opened the specific ports that is needed in that one environment, and we have added all the services that those specific application needs. You can think of this like tailoring that we used when we talked about implementing certain standards. The hardened OS image is the baseline, and then we configure whatever else this specific application and this server needs to be open or closed. Alright, back to the server. We now put it into production, and once it is in production, we start monitoring all the changes that are made away from the security baseline. And we do that to make sure there are no administrators that does something they're not supposed to, thereby weakening the security posture of the server. I have worked in many places where administrators have gone in and changed things they shouldn't just to make something work, because they needed it to work right now, and it's much easier just opening things up and making the server less secure than it is to go through the right process and find the right fix. So obviously in our organization, for the exam, we have proper configuration management policies, and we have proper monitoring on our servers and our other devices So if anyone makes any changes to the configuration of any server or any device, we get notified. And of course, any configuration change should have gone through the proper change control. And if we haven't gone through that process, well then changes shouldn't be made. And with that, we are done with this lecture. I will see you in the next one.